Psychoanalysis has described several different defense mechanisms and even several different levels of defense mechanisms. In general, defense mechanisms are automatic, unconscious processes we use unwillingly outside of our conscious awareness to deal with anxiety or tension or pressure or whatever is going on inside of us that is unpleasurable. One of the most frequently used and discussed of these defense mechanisms is projection. It was first described before World War I when Freud tried to explain how paranoid disorders worked. And he described how paranoid patients might ascribe to another person what actually was going on inside of them. So instead of saying, I love you or I hate you, I say, you love me or you hate me. We think other people or we believe other people feel or want to do or have intentions that actually are ours inside of us. We just don't know what to do with them. The mechanism of projection became very important in discussing developmental matters because many psychoanalysts, very probably starting with Melanie Klein and her second analyst Carl Abraham, believed that the early development was based on two mechanisms, projection and introjection. We were taking something from the outside into our body and our personality, and we were taking something outside of us, out of our body and out of our psychological space. So it was believed that whatever was good outside, starting with mother's milk and then love and laughter and smiles and pride parents might have in us and so on, gets introjected or incorporated and becomes also a part of our personalities. And also everything we did not want to have in us, everything that caused any sort of tension or anxiety in us, we would use any opportunity to send out. This also again starts on the bodily level with excrements and then can go to feelings and later on thoughts and beliefs. What we project can be different psychological elements. We may project emotions, as when we say, it's not that I hate him, he hates me, or it can be aims. It is not that I want to beat him, he wants to beat me. It is not that I want to have sex with her, she wants to have sex with me. Or it can be parts of personality. Some psychoanalysts believe that we project parts of ourselves into other people when it's unbearable for us to have them inside or to deal with them. Projection is an extremely frequently used mechanism in our social relationships. And it is very important also for psychoanalysts to be aware of the danger, I think I should say, of projecting something of our own onto our patients, into thinking that patients feel, believe, or think something about us that basically is ours. The work with projection then is a very important and can be tricky issue. If we believe there is a projection in the patient, what sometimes has to be used is what we call confrontations. Confronting the patient with something they do not want to know. And this has to be dealt with very carefully because it may lead to conflicts or misunderstandings or even dropouts. But we also have to self-reflect constantly and work on our own unconscious in order to be sure that we will not project on patients and other people. Projection, as I've just described it, belongs to the so-called neurotic level defense mechanisms, together with repression, rationalization, intellectualization, reaction formation, and so on. Projection means that there is something in me I'm projecting onto another person, and this person does not have to be aware of that. I may think that the other person feels something for me, and that person lives their life and has no idea about my beliefs. Another more complicated and more developmentally primitive defense mechanism we call projective identification, introduced by Melanie Klein and Fabian by the end of the Second World War. This is the so-called schizoid defense mechanism that Kleinian analysts believe infants use and then borderline and psychotic patients use. Projective identification, we say, is into the other person. So what I feel or believe goes into the other person, influences him or her, and changes their behavior and feelings. So it is a more powerful and more disturbing mechanism. Hypothetically, infants and severely disturbed patients have parts of their selves that are not acceptable, that are too painful, that are a consequence of trauma. Kleinian analysts believe that are a consequence of the death drive being very active at that moment. And with infants, where their ego is not well developed, they have somehow to get rid of it. The way they get rid of it is to send it, to deposit it into the parent and then feel relieved. This, however, makes a change in the feelings and behavior of the parent. So one of the most important tasks a mother, and then metaphorically, mother always stands for a psychoanalyst, the analyst has to do is digest what the infant was not able to digest. So that what in the infant is a disintegration anxiety, a huge intense fear of death or disintegrating, in the mother will become merely signal anxiety, a signal, a sign that something has to be done. Projective identification, for instance, can be a consequence of hunger, which causes anxiety and with which the infant does not know what to do. But the mother, when this touches her inside of her personality, must not come into the same form of panic because of hunger, but needs to figure out that something has to be done and prepare food or offer breastfeeding. The same with the analyst. Analysts who work with severely disturbed patients, with traumatized persons, are regularly faced with projective identifications of unacceptable or unbearable parts of patients' personalities. What they need to do is digest, figure out, bear the anxiety somehow, and then return, not this time food, but interpretation. Understand and find words for this state, for these feelings, and offer the interpretation to the patient so that the patient can learn how to work, how to deal with it, him or herself, and go on. Projection and projective identification are based on non-verbally influencing other people and releasing something that we have in ourselves. So the emphasis in psychoanalysis on talking cure is not fully justified, because paying constant attention to non-verbal behavior that we ourselves and other people are using is extremely important.